Hello, welcome everyone. It's 5 o'clock for the Route 460, 121. This is the Poplar Creek section, Phase B, our virtual public hearing. It is 5 o'clock, but we're going to give folks just a few minutes here to join. We still have people that are clicking in. So I'm going to mute and we'll start the presentation at 5:05. All right, everybody. Well, it's 5:05. I think we're going to get started here. We should have most of the folks joined by now. I'd like to welcome you to the virtual public meeting for the US 460 121 Poplar Creek section, Phase B. We appreciate your interest in the project, and we thank you for taking the time to view this presentation.
Preston, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you've lost audio.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can hear you now. Okay.
All right. So did everyone hear the opening there?
I heard the welcome. Yes.
Okay, sorry. All right. Well, given the unique circumstances of the COVID-19 outbreak, along with our commitment to protecting public health during this national emergency, VDOT is conducting this virtual public hearing to avoid in-person contact. This presentation will cover the same information that Bristol District staff would have shared during the in-person meeting. However, the comment process will be a little bit different. Details on how to submit your comments and have your questions addressed will be covered later in the presentation, and all of our project information can be found on VDOT's website. The primary purpose of this project is to construct approximately 1.86 miles of two-lane highway, which will complete Corridor Q in Virginia and connect Route 460 at the Kentucky state line with existing Route 460 in Grundy. The focus of this meeting will be the Poplar Creek Phase B section, which begins near Route 604, which is Poplar Creek Road, and ends at the connection to existing Route 460 in Grundy. The project will include one bridge, which crosses the Lovisa Fork River near the present location of Hardee's. The new construction roadway will tie into existing Route 460 near the current location of Hardee's Restaurant. An at-grade intersection will be constructed to accommodate motorists traveling west along existing Route 460 to Kentucky. Existing Route 460 will remain open to two-way traffic during construction of the project. Flaggers will direct traffic through two temporary detours along existing Route 460. The main goal of the project is upgrading regional transportation systems. Completion of Corridor Q will allow for additional economic development in the region and improve travel times. The new construction, limited access highway will provide improvements in safety and capacity over the current routes. As the design is developed, VDOT will determine what right-of-way and easements will be needed to accommodate the construction. Property owners will be notified of the exact location of the right-of-way and easements needed during the right-of-way acquisition process and prior to construction. Right-of-way acquisition is anticipated to begin in the summer of 2021. The proposed design for the project requires approximately 390 acres of proposed right-of-way and easements. This includes acquiring a right-of-way from 39 property owners. Those potentially impacted property owners were informed by letter of this meeting and given contact information should they have questions about the project and potentially impacted properties. Rick Lively of 3B Consulting Services will represent the department during the right-of-way acquisition phase. Rick can be reached at area code 276-880-0121 to discuss specific right-of-way concerns. At this time, the proposed design requires the relocation of all residences and businesses along existing Route 460 from the swinging bridge north to the consignment shop that's down the river. West of the river, all the residences along Meeting House Branch are proposed to be relocated as well. In addition to a link to VDOT's right-of-way brochure, a number of documents are available on the virtual public involvement webpage that led you to this presentation. That webpage is virginiadot.org/Poplar Creek Phase B. Please take time to review the documents prior to submitting your comments to VDOT. The project documents will be available on the website until the end of the public comment period on May 28th, 2021. Hard copies of the project documents may be reviewed in person by calling our office at 276-880-0121 to schedule an appointment. FHWA, which is the Federal Highway Administration, and VDOT drafted a document for the project to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, known as NEPA. This document, referred to as a NEPA reevaluation, reviews, updates, and reaffirms conclusions documented in the project's previous NEPA documents, which include the 2001 Final Environmental Impact Statement, EIS, and Record of Decision, which identified the preferred alternative for the project. That document was approved in November of 2001. It also includes the 2014 Environmental Studies documents, which reviewed revisions to what was proposed in the original EIS. And that study was approved in July of 2015. And finally, it includes the 2017 reevaluation for Poplar Creek Phase A, the quarter Q overlap section, which reassessed the first phase of this project under NEPA. Now, the reevaluation is required due to the time that has passed since the original concepts were documented in the EIS and changes to the surrounding environment that have occurred since that time. The reevaluation for this project matches the format and methods of analysis used for Phase A of the Poplar Creek project. VDOT is currently accepting comments on the document. Following public comment, VDOT will consider and update the document accordingly before submitting to Federal Highway Administration. FHWA's acceptance of the document will conclude the NEPA effort. The current project estimate is $200 million and includes $25 million for preliminary engineering, $13 million for right-of-way, and approximately $162 million for construction. The construction will occur in multiple work packages. Therefore, not all the right-of-way will be acquired when construction begins. Let's review the project timeline. We are currently in the design process, soliciting public feedback to assist with the final design of the project. Comments will be received, addressed, and presented to VDOT for review and approval. Once the design is approved, right-of-way acquisition will begin. Right-of-way acquisition is anticipated to begin during late spring or early summer of 2021 and take about 1 year to complete. Construction is scheduled to begin in the fall of 2021 and wrap up in early 2026. Following review of the online documents for this public meeting, comments must be submitted to VDOT and received by May the 28th, 2021 to be considered as part of the public involvement process. Listed are 4 options to submit your formal comments via telephone, email, traditional mail, or via the comment sheet completed on the project website, which again is www.virginiadot.org/Poplar Creek Phase B. Now, during this virtual public hearing, I want to explain how to ask your question using the chat feature. You simply write your question in the chat function. We will read the questions aloud and answer them in the order received. If you would prefer to state your question aloud, please type your name in the chat. When your name is called, you'll be unmuted and you can ask your question. We will turn the chat function on and off if necessary so that we can manage all the questions that are received. When the chat function is on, all participants will be able to see all of the messages. We ask that you only write in questions or your name if you prefer. The chat function should not be used for any other type of commentary during the meeting. And if you're calling in by telephone, press *3 to raise your hand, and you'll be added to the queue to ask your question. We will announce when it's your turn to ask your question, and we will unmute your phone line. You will hear your line has been unmuted, after which you'll be able to ask your question. Once you've asked your question, press *3 again to lower your hand. You'll be muted again at this time to avoid echo and feedback due to the number of participants. So we're going to leave this slide up here as we formally open the question and answer session. And again, this reviews, if you're using WebEx, how to use the chat function. So you can type your question in the chat box or your name if you'd like to ask your question yourself. And if you're calling by phone, you press *3 and we'll see that you've raised your hand and we'll call your name. And if you're on YouTube, you've got the phone number here, which is 1-866-692-4530 with the access code. And again, you'll follow the *3 to raise your hand. So with that, I'll ask Michelle if we have any members of the elected officials who would like to speak before we open comments from the general public.
I don't think there are any on, but if certainly if an elected official would like to come off mute and address the group, if they could just type their name in the chat, we'll take them off mute.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to accept any questions from the members of the public. So if you'd like to ask a question, you can put that question in the chat box or press *3 if you're connected by telephone. Okay, well, just to remind everyone, there's no such thing as a silly question. We'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. We also have access here to the project website. If you have a question about a specific parcel or portion of the project, we can pull up those drawings and answer your questions using that as a reference. Be glad to answer anything you may have. All right, well, we're going to leave the question and answer session open for a few minutes here, just in case anyone has a comment or question that you think of. We'll be glad to take those. We're just going to stay on the line here for at least 5 to 10 minutes to make sure that we don't have anyone join late or someone that's already on the call thinks of a question they'd like to ask. Again, we'll be happy to answer anything on your mind.
Preston, I would also remind folks that the presentation will be on our webpage that led them to this presentation by this evening. And there's also a copy of the presentation we did last Tuesday as well. So both of those will be on there if anyone wants to review them. And also contact information is on that page as well, should they think of a question after the meeting.
Okay, and while we're waiting on anyone to ask a question, I'll go ahead and review those methods just as a reminder to everyone, and then we'll come back to this WebEx how-to here at the end. So again, ways to provide comments. There are various ways that you can comment to become part of the public record for this. You can use the online comment form, which is on the project webpage, which is the virginiadot.org. And then if you're on that webpage, we do encourage you to take our survey, the Civil Rights Survey, which is on that public meeting page. You can comment by email to bristolinfo@vdot.virginia.gov. But please include in the subject Poplar Creek Phase B. We don't want to miss anything there. And then there's also here by traditional mail, or you can schedule an in-person appointment, and we'll be happy to take down any verbal comments you have, and we'll include those as part of the public record as well. And finally, you can just call us, and we'll be happy to take that over the phone.
Preston, we do have a question.
Great.
Is this the last part of new Route 460?
I believe the answer to that is yes. Route 460, has been improved once we connect in Grundy. This project ends just beyond the fire station for locals who know where that is. And there's 4 lanes that come from the Walmart there in town down toward Hardee's. And so we're going to be connecting to that 4-lane section. And so if you leave downtown Grundy and you're heading west, that 4-lane will continue into this project, which will be 4 lanes initially for the first little bit there, but designed as a 2-lane road with truck climbing lanes. Yes, so this will complete Route 460 Corridor Q in Virginia. The Corridor Q is the ARC designation, Appalachian Regional Commission. I believe there are some remaining sections of 460 farther to the east, but in our area, this will complete it. And this section will take you to have a connection to the existing projects under construction in Poplar Creek near Route 604, which continues on to Route 744, which connects to Southern Gap. And then that continues on to Route 609 and onto the breaks at the Kentucky state line. So this will connect to those big bridges that were recently open to traffic. Also on the project webpage, we do have a video which has a 3D model. It's a rendering. It's a really neat video. We wanted to try to share that here, but we were afraid the size of that presentation may be a little more than we could handle. But if you could check out our project webpage, that video is available. It's really neat to watch and gives you a good idea of what this project's going to look like when constructed. Do we have any more questions, Michelle?
Yes, there is a follow-up question about the 4-laning, if it will remain a U.S. highway. And
yes,
I don't know if I know the answer to that question.
Well, this is designated as US 460, but this particular section is also, it's what we call dually designated. So it actually has 2 route numbers. It's Route 460 and Route 121, which is the Coalfields Expressway locally. And both of those are, it's of course a federally funded project, as our U.S. federal highway numbers. So 460 travels, from Virginia to Kentucky, and 121 at this location, in the future, that there's no design or anything completed right now, but 121 would separate from this road somewhere around this area, Hardee's or up on the mountain, and it would continue on up Slate Creek. So.
And will old 460 remain a U.S. highway? That may have been the question as well.
Yes. So we're working on that name, and I'm not 100% sure we have the answer to what it's going to be called. But if the easy way to describe it for you is if you're leaving Grundy and you're going down to the past the fire station, you will have 4 lanes, and then you will start climbing in elevation, be going uphill. And just before we reach where the current Hardee's is, and this is Mary Belcher's property, there'll be a T intersection. So if you want to go on down to Riverview to the school or Looney's Creek or any point west toward Big Rock, you will be able to turn right. There'll be a right turn lane, and a little ramp that'll ramp you down to where the pharmacy is. The pharmacy is staying, and the carpet outlet there. And so that will be a right turn. You'll go down the ramp and continue on what we know now is 460. And so just as you do today. So there will be a way to get that, continue on 460. And if you're coming down the mountain from the breaks or over in Poplar Creek or from Southern Gap, you'll be coming down you'll cross the river on the bridge. And when you get to the end of the bridge, there'll be a left turn lane. You'll be able to turn left onto this ramp and then go on down to Riverview there. So it's going to be a really big, wide intersection to make that turn.
Kristen, there's another question.
Yes.
Has consideration been given to four-laning this road while the construction has been approved and monies appropriated?
Yes, we've actually given a great deal of time and effort to studying those options. This section is technically designed as a two-lane highway with truck climbing lanes. For the most part, this project will result in 4 lanes of asphalt constructed, although it's not necessarily designed as a 4-lane. But from this proposed intersection out to the eastern end of the project where the fire station is, past the swinging bridge, that's going to be 4 lanes connecting. And then the bridge itself is 4 lanes. And as you're going up the hill, as you cross the river, from the Dotson's AEP area, as you cross the river and go up the mountain, there'll be 2 lanes moving up. So there'll be a truck climbing lane there for slower vehicles. And then as you're coming down, we have a truck climbing lane ending from the previous job, the Poplar Creek Section A. And so we have the beginning of this job is 2 lanes eastbound. And then as we're coming down the mountain, we just carry that on through because one of those lanes becomes a left turn lane to the older 460. It'll be left there. And then there'll be a lane continuing on into Grundy. So again, although it's not designated as 4 lanes and it's not designed using a 4-lane template, so to speak, for all practical purposes, we will have 4 lanes of roadway throughout most of the section.
Okay, thanks, Preston. I have another one.
Yeah.
Ms. Fowler asks, I have the surface rights to parcel 2, but the mineral rights have been leased since before 1984, excuse me. How will this affect the purchase by VDOT?
Right. Well, I'm glad. I saw Ms. Fowler had joined, and I'm so glad you asked that question. I'd hope that you would. Mineral right-of-way acquisition is a big part of this project. It is very unique. So while typically we, in these hearings, we share the surface parcels, and you're correct, parcel 2 is associated with the surface. We also have mineral parcels, and I believe your mineral parcel falls under 302. We number those with 300 series numbers. And so for each mineral parcel, we have a mineral appraiser who's on the team. And that team goes out and analyzes how the roadway impacts the existing mineral that's in place. We do have to deal with leases. Sometimes leaseholders have permitted operations that we have to deal with. I don't believe there are any permitted mines in this section, but we've had to deal with that in the past. So they will assess the mineral separately than the surface. And in some cases where it's the same ownership, but I'm not sure that it's there, the same ownership. But if it were to be the same ownership, we like to make those offers together. I mean, if it's a fee simple property, we like to offer both surface and mineral at the same time. But if there's any different ownership, we'll make an offer for the surface and then we'll make an offer for the mineral. And the mineral will consider, the tonnage of coal that's impacted by the roadway. And typically we look at that in 2 different quantities. One is there's a certain amount of coal that will be removed just as we excavate the mountain for the roadway. And so that coal is typically referred to as construction coal. And then there's coal that will remain under the slopes. And if you can imagine those big roadway slopes on either side, will be very tall. There'll be some coal under that obviously after we build the road, you won't be able to recover that. So there's a zone of remaining mineral under the slopes and directly beneath the roadway that we also purchased that from the mineral owners to prevent any future mining that could create subsidence under the road. So we've actually started that process, and so hopefully this summer we'll be reaching out to you to make an offer.
Preston, this is a good question. How many minutes will it take to travel from Poplar Gap to Pikeville when the road is complete? You may have that more down from Grundy to Kentucky, but I'll let you, if you know the answer to Poplar Gap to Pikeville and then how long it will take on the new road.
Right. I don't know that answer off the top of my head. For some reason, I recall people saying maybe 45 minutes, but I don't know that that's technically right. I just know it's going to be much, much faster. And I like to tell folks that if you leave downtown Grundy and Courthouse or Walmart area, and you're traveling west on 460, you won't have a stop sign until you won't have a stop until you reach Pikeville. This is both our section of Virginia and Kentucky's is designed as a limited access highway, which is similar. Most folks around here equate that to an interstate where you don't have driveway connections. So you're able to travel a little bit faster. The connections are limited, but you won't have any stops. You won't have any turns. So once you leave Grundy, you'll be able to drive to Pikeville and return without any stops or turns. So it'll be much more pleasant and safer and faster.
Thanks, Preston. Ms. Fowler has a follow-up question, and forgive me if I say this incorrectly. It is a fee simple property, but very complicated. As surface owner, will the provisions of the lease be respected as far as tonnage, etc.?
It is very complicated. Our title specialist was actually here today, and we've been working on this track for a long time, and that's why I was so quick to recognize your name and the participants. In terms of the lease, we deal with the landowner first and the mineral owner, and we consider any mineral that may be acquired, that needs to be acquired because we're impacting it from the roadway. That coal, I should just back up and say, we will acquire all of the coal within the roadway and within this protective zone beneath the slopes and beneath the roadway. The mineral appraiser looks at the coal and determines does that coal constitute a reserve? Meaning, could it be permitted and mined economically? Within this project, there's a mix of both of those. There are some higher seams up in the top of the mountain in this area that have not been mined that we assume are economical, but that decision will have to be made. And once the appraiser looks at all the data, and then there are some underlying seams that are pretty commonly known as the Hagen and Splash Dam. Those seams have been mined quite extensively in the past, both deep mined and other methods. And so that coal will have to look at the mine maps and all the data. We've collected hundreds of boreholes and lots of coal thicknesses. We've also worked with the leaseholder, in this case, the folks that have leased your property, and they've supplied us with some data that they have relative to mining and reserves. And so we combine all that into a model and create a 3D model. And so, for example, if there's a seam or rider that's 3 or 4 inches thick in there, we do say that we need to acquire that coal, but it may not have any value because no one can recover it and mine it. And then for seams that have been previously mined, like the Hagen Splash Dam, they may, for the most part, have been deep mined, but there could remain some reserves, whether there could be auger reserves. If there's sections that haven't been augered from the outcrop, that there could be remaining value there. And the appraiser will go through that process and look and determine that. It's in terms of the leaseholder, we look at anything that the leaseholder has ongoing, and really that comes down to permitted operations. If there is a permitted operation, and we have that on the adjacent project, then we have to work with that leaseholder to modify their mine permit to accommodate the roadway. We're actually actively in that process now on the Phase A project, and we work with the permittee their consulting group and DMME and the permitting agencies on that side. And the land use has changed to public highway, and VDOT assumes that, and we construct the roadway through the previously mined area. Again, I don't believe, based on our understanding of where things are on the Phase B project, we don't expect to have any permitted operations. So probably the impacts to the leaseholders would be very minor, if any. And we have had some discussions. We are aware that there are some studies ongoing, and we are consulting with the permit or the leaseholder, lessee in this case, to try to better understand that. It is very complicated. I 100% agree with that assessment.
Preston, I don't see any new questions at this time. Why don't we hang on the line for about 10 minutes, let's say 5:45, to see if we get any others?
Sure. All right, we're coming up on our 5:45 time here. Just want to ask one more time if anyone has any final questions or comments that would like to be incorporated into the record. We'll be glad to take them now. And if you think of something later, please refer back to the project page and this presentation. It gives you the ways to submit any additional written questions. Again, you have until the 28th, which I believe is next Tuesday. And so there are lots of ways you can get those comments in. We'd welcome anything that you have to offer. Michelle, do you see any more comments?
No, just that 28th is Friday, so they do have a few more days. And also if your comments, that's okay. But if you want to go on and take the online survey just to say that, you know, you're in favor of the project, or if you would like to put any of the questions that you ask tonight into the public record, that that would require using the online survey or filling out a comment sheet and mailing it to us by Friday.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.